The superglue fumes burned through Emma Wallace's nostrils as she realized her entire body was bonded to the wooden chair trapped in front of 800 students while Coach Bradley's hands moved where they shouldn't. What started as harmless hazing at Westfield Academy had spiraled into something so vile that even the security cameras would mysteriously malfunction that day. But Emma had one advantage nobody knew about: the live stream app already recording everything from her hidden phone, broadcasting to 30,000 viewers who were about to witness the most shocking takedown in American high school history. Before we dive into Emma's story, I want to take just a moment to connect with you. If stories like this resonate with you, stories about finding courage in our darkest moment, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people discover these important narratives. And drop a comment sharing your thoughts or your own experiences with standing up to injustice. This community we're building together is what makes these stories so powerful. I also want to mention something close to my heart. Creating these stories takes tremendous research and time. But more importantly, your support through the thanks button below. This video helps me reach more people who need to hear these messages of hope and courage. Every contribution, no matter how small, goes directly into crafting more stories that inspire change and give voice to the silenced. If Emma's journey moves you, if you believe in the power of storytelling to transform lives, consider showing that support. Together, we're not just sharing stories, we're building a movement of awareness and empowerment. Emma Wallace had always been the invisible one, the kind of girl who ate lunch in the library and wore oversized hoodies to disappear into the background. At 17, she'd mastered the art of being unseen at Westfield Academy, the prestigious private school where her scholarship barely covered tuition, let alone the designer uniforms everyone else wore. Her second-hand blazer, carefully mended by her mother's tired hands, marked her as different from the moment she'd walked through those mahogany doors 3 months ago. The morning of October 15th started like any other. Emma clutched her worn canvas backpack as she navigated the marble hallways, keeping her eyes down, counting the tiles. 47 steps from the main entrance to her locker. She'd memorized every route that avoided the spots where the elite students gathered, the alcove near the trophy cases where the lacrosse team held court, the atrium where the debate team plotted their social climbing, the corner by the vending machines where the drama club practiced their cruelty on real targets. But today, something felt different. The whispers followed her more closely. Phones lifted as she passed. Smirks spreading like wildfire across perfectly glossed lips. There she is, someone hissed. Scholarship girl. Emma's stomach churned, but she kept walking. 3 more weeks until semester break. 3 more weeks until she could breathe again. Coach Derek Bradley stood at the intersection of the main hallway, his 6'4" frame blocking her usual route to AP Chemistry. At 38, he was Westfield's golden boy, former NFL prospect whose knee injury had redirected him to shaping young minds, or so the school brochure claimed. Parents loved him. The board of trustees worshipped him. His win record for the varsity football team had brought in $2 million in alumni donations last year alone. Emma, he called out, his voice carrying that particular tone that made her skin crawl. My office. Now. She froze. In 3 months at Westfield, she'd managed to avoid any direct interaction with him. Despite his increasing attempts to corner her, other girls had warned her in whispered bathroom conversations, never be alone with Coach Bradley, never accept his offers for extra credit or special training, never trust that all-American smile that graced every school publication. I have chemistry, Emma said quietly, not meeting his eyes. I've already spoken to Dr. Andevins. Patterson, you're excused. His hand landed on her shoulder, heavy and possessive. We need to discuss your participation in school activities. The hallway suddenly felt very empty. The few students who'd been lingering scattered like roaches when the lights flicked on, leaving Emma alone with the man whose reputation existed in 2 versions. The public one carved in trophies and the whispered one that lived in girls' nightmares. His office smelled like leather and cologne. The walls lined with photos of championship teams and a disturbing number of pictures featuring female students in athletic wear. Emma stood near the door, her hand on the knob. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "I'd prefer to stand." His jaw tightened. "I said sit." The authority in his voice was absolute, the kind that had made him successful at breaking down defensive lines. Apparently, teenage girls' boundaries. Emma's legs betrayed her, carrying her to the chair even as every instinct screamed to run. "You know," Coach Bradley began, coming around the desk to lean against its edge. "Too close. Always too close. Westfield Academy has certain expectations for its students. Participation in extracurriculars isn't optional, especially for scholarship recipients. I'm in the science club," Emma offered weakly. He laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "The science club doesn't bring in donors, doesn't create school spirit, doesn't make the kind of connections that matter. You need to be more visible." His hand reached out, fingering the collar of her second-hand blazer. "Starting with this, the uniform code requires the current season's design. This is what, 3 years old? 4? Emma jerked back. "My family can't." "I could help with that," he interrupted, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was seductive. "Private donors often contribute to special cases. Students who show promise. Students who are willing to be team players." The implication hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had been burning long before Emma arrived at Westfield. She thought of the other scholarship girls who'd suddenly transferred mid-semester, of the way certain female athletes flinched when Coach Bradley's name was mentioned, of the carefully worded warnings passed down like survival guides. "I need to go," Emma said, standing abruptly. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "We're not done here." "Yes, we are." She yanked free, her heart hammering against her ribs. His face transformed, the mask of concern sliding away to reveal something harder, meaner. "You might want to reconsider that attitude, Miss Wallace. Scholarships can be re-evaluated, especially when students fail to meet behavioral standards." Emma fled, not caring about the chemistry class she was missing or the stairs that followed her down the hallway. She locked herself in a bathroom stall and tried to stop shaking, tried to process what had just happened, tried to figure out how she'd become a target in a game she'd never agreed to play. The rest of the day blurred together, whispers following her like shadows, phones documenting her every move. The sensation of being hunted by something she couldn't quite see. By lunchtime, the rumors had already started. Emma Wallace had been called to Coach Bradley's office. Emma Wallace thought she was too good for school activities. Emma Wallace was about to learn what happened to girls who didn't play by Westfield rules. She ate her packed lunch in the farthest corner of the library, surrounded by dusty philosophy books that nobody ever checked out. Her Phonia-cracked iPhone 8 that had belonged to her mother buzzed with notifications from the school's social media networks. She didn't need to look to know what they said. The machine had started turning, and she was caught in its gears. "Hey," a voice whispered from behind the bookshelf. "Emma, right?" A girl emerged, Chloe Martinez, a junior like Emma, but from the other side of Westfield's economic divide. Her designer uniform fit perfectly, her highlights professionally done, her presence in the library as unusual as finding a peacock in a pigeon coop. "What do you want?" Emma asked, too tired for whatever new torment this might be. Chloe glanced around nervously, then slid into the chair across from Emma. "I wanted to warn you about tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" "The pep rally for the homecoming game." Chloe's voice dropped even lower. "They're planning something. I heard Madison and her crew talking in the bathroom. Something about teaching the scholarship girl a lesson about school spirit." Emma's stomach dropped. Madison Price, a cheer captain, Coach Bradley's star athlete, and the unofficial queen of Westfield's social hierarchy. If Madison had targeted her, it meant Coach Bradley had given the order. The man never got his hands dirty directly, not when he had an army of privileged teenagers willing to do his bidding in exchange for recommendation letters and starting positions. "Why are you telling me this?" Emma asked. Chloe's perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms. "Because what happened to Jessica Matthews last year wasn't right. What happened to Aaliyah Johnson wasn't right. What's been happening in this school for years isn't right." She stood abruptly. "Just don't go to the pep rally. Call in sick. Do whatever you have to do." But Emma knew it wasn't that simple. Attendance at pep rallies was mandatory, especially for scholarship students. Missing it would be marked as a behavioral violation. One step closer to losing everything her mother had sacrificed to give her. That night, Emma lay in her narrow bed in the apartment she shared with her mother and younger brother. Staring at the ceiling and trying to devise a plan, she thought about recording devices, about witnesses, about the ways other girls must have tried to protect themselves and failed. The system was designed to protect people like Coach Bradley, not people like her. She must have dozed off because suddenly her alarm was shrieking and pale. Morning light was filtering through the thin curtains. October 16th, the day everything would change. Emma dressed carefully, adding an extra layer under her uniform just in case. She slipped her phone into a hidden pocket she'd sewn into her blazer, then thought better of it and grabbed her mother's old iPod Touch, the one with the cracked screen that still somehow managed to connect to Wi-Fi. 2 devices were better than 1. The school buzzed with homecoming energy, blue and gold streamers hanging from every surface, the sound of the marching band practicing echoing through the hallways. Emma kept her head down, making it through first and second period without incident. But as third period ended and students began flowing toward the gymnasium for the pep rally, her heart rate spiked. She could skip it, take the demerit, deal with the consequences later. But something in her rebelled at the thought. She'd been running her whole life from poverty, from prejudice, from people who thought her secondhand clothes and bus pass made her less than human. Maybe it was time to stop running. The gymnasium was packed, 800 students crammed into bleachers that groaned under their collective weight. Emma found a spot in the back corner, trying to blend into the shadows. The band played the school fight song while the cheer squad performed their pre-game routine, Madison Price front and center, her smile as sharp as a blade. Coach Bradley took the microphone, his voice booming through the speakers. "Westfield Warriors, are you ready for homecoming?" The crowd roared. Emma stayed silent. "You know," Coach Bradley continued, his eyes scanning the crowd with predatory precision, "school spirit isn't just about showing up. It's about participation. It's about being part of something bigger than yourself. It's about understanding that at Westfield, we're not just students. We're a family." His gaze found Emma in the back row. And families take care of each other. Families support each other. Families don't hide in corners. Too good to join in. A ripple went through the crowd as heads turned, following his line of sight. Emma felt 800 pairs of eyes land on her like physical weight. In fact, Coach Bradley's smile widened. "Why don't we show our newest scholarship recipient what Westfield spirit really means? Emma Wallace. Come on down here." The crowd parted like the Red Sea, creating a pathway from her seat to the gym floor. Emma's legs felt like water, but she forced herself to stand Bayduge. Running now would only make it worse. Each step down the bleachers felt like a mile. Students filmed her descent with their phones. Their faces, masks of anticipation. She reached the gym floor where Coach Bradley waited, Madison and her squad flanking him like an honor guard. "Emma here," Coach Bradley announced to the crowd, "needs to learn about participation, about being a team player." "Madison, I think you had something special planned?" Madison stepped forward, her cheer, uniform, immaculate, her smile poisonous. "We thought Emma might want to experience what it's like to really be part of Westfield, to be connected to the school spirit." 2 male cheerleaders wheeled out a wooden chair, the kind used in the old classrooms, solid and heavy. They placed it in the center of the gym floor, directly under the brightest lights. "Sit," Madison commanded. Emma looked at the chair, at the crowd, at the exits blocked by faculty members who were definitely in on whatever this was. Her phone sat heavy in her pocket, the iPod Touch in her other pocket. Already recording audio, she'd turned it on the moment Coach Bradley had called her name. She sat. The crowd cheered as if she'd done something spectacular. Madison produced a blue and gold sash Westfield Spirit, emblazoned across it in glittering letters. "Every new student gets inaugurated into the Westfield family," Madison announced. "It's tradition." But as Madison draped the sash over Emma's shoulders, other cheerleaders moved in with more supplies. Rolls of blue and gold streamers, ribbons, what looked like craft supplies for innocent school spirit activities. Until Emma smelled it. The sharp, chemical scent that made her eyes water. Super glue. "What are you?" Emma started to stand, but hands pushed her back down. "Shh," Madison whispered in her ear. "You wanted to hide from school activities? Well, now you get to be the centerpiece. Don't worry, it's just a little adhesive to make sure the decorations stay put. To make sure you stay put." The first drop of glue hit Emma's blazer sleeve, soaking through to her skin. Then another on her shoulder, her back. The cheerleaders worked with practiced efficiency, layering streamers and ribbons over the glue, creating what would look to the crowd like an elaborate spirit decoration, but was actually binding Emma to the chair. "Stop," Emma said, her voice barely audible over the crowd's cheering. "What's wrong?" Coach Bradley's voice boomed through the microphone. "Not feeling the school spirit yet? Maybe we need more enthusiasm from our warriors." The crowd roared louder, drowning out Emma's protests. She tried to move, but the glue was already hardening, fusing the fabric of her uniform to the wooden chair. The streamers wrapped around her arms, her torso, her legs, each one sealed with more adhesive. Panic clawed at her throat. This wasn't hazing. This was assault. This was imprisonment. This was... Coach Bradley approached, bending down as if to adjust the sash, his back to the crowd blocking their view. His hand slid along her shoulder, down her arm, lingering in ways that made bile rise in her throat. "Still think you're too good for my attention?" he murmured. "This is what happens to girls who don't play nice. Emma, and this is just the beginning." His hand moved lower. Protected from the crowd's view by the wall of cheerleaders surrounding them, Emma's skin crawled, her body trying to recoil but held fast by the hardening glue. That's when she remembered the second device. Fighting through the panic, Emma managed to work her hand into her left pocket where the iPod Touch sat. Her fingers, still free below the wrist, found the screen, swiped to the camera app she'd preset to live stream. One tap was all it took. The live stream went active on her backup Instagram account, the one she'd created after watching what happened to other girls. The one followed by feminist bloggers and education activists she'd connected with online. The notification would go out to 30,000 followers. "Live from Westfield Academy." "Smile," Madison commanded. As the cheerleaders stepped back to reveal their handiwork, "You're the star of the show." Emma sat trapped in the chair, wrapped in blue and gold like some grotesque trophy. The crowd laughed, phones flashing, thinking they were witnessing harmless school tradition. They couldn't see the glue hardening against her skin, couldn't smell the chemical burn in her nostrils, couldn't feel Coach Bradley's hands returning. Bolder. Now that she was completely immobilized, "Let's show Emma some real Westfield appreciation," he announced. "Everyone, give her a round of applause for being such a good sport." The gymnasium erupted in mockery disguised as celebration, but Emma's eyes had found the iPod screen in her pocket, angled just right to catch Coach Bradley's hand as it slid across her collarbone, his fingers toying with the collar of her uniform. The viewer count was climbing. 500. Iten. Lansen Wubei. "You know," Coach Bradley continued, his voice syrupy with false concern, "I think our decoration needs some adjustments. Madison, why don't you and the squad take 5? I'll make sure our centerpiece is properly displayed." The cheerleaders dispersed, leaving Emma alone with him in the center of the gym. 800 students watching what they thought was just another humiliation ritual. They couldn't see his hand disappearing behind the streamers. They couldn't hear his breathing change. They couldn't... What the hell is going on here? The voice cracked through the gymnasium like a whip. Principal Catherine Morrison stood in the doorway, her phone in her hand, her face white with horror. Behind her, school security officers were already moving. The viewer count on Emma's stream, 15,000 and climbing. Principal Morrison. Coach Bradley straightened, his politician's smile sliding into place. I'm watching it live. She cut him off, holding up her phone. The whole world is watching it live. Security. Get that girl free. Now. And somebody call 911. The gymnasium erupted in chaos. Students screaming. Faculty running. The careful order of Westfield Academy crumbling in real time. Security officers surrounded Emma, one radioing for the nurse, while another began carefully cutting through the streamers with scissors. Don't move. Honey, the officer said gently. The adhesive? This is going to take time. We need to do this right or we'll hurt you. Coach Bradley was backing toward the exit, but police officers were already entering the gym. Principal Morrison's voice carried over the chaos. Derek Bradley, stay exactly where you are. The live stream kept rolling. Arshawu. 000 viewers. Sancher. Ling. Comments flooded in faster than Emma could read. Is this real? Someone call the FBI. I'm a reporter with CNN. DMing you now. This is sexual assault. Save this stream before they delete it. Madison Price stood frozen at the edge of the court, her perfect face crumbling as she realized what she'd participated in. Other students were deleting videos from their phones, suddenly understanding that what they'd filmed wasn't a funny prank but evidence of a crime. It took 45 minutes to free Emma from the chair. The school nurse documented every burn from the superglue, every mark on her skin. While police photographers captured the scene, Emma's uniform was ruined, fused to the wood in places, having to be cut away. They wrapped her in an emergency blanket, her body shaking, not from cold but from the adrenaline crash. The live stream, she whispered to the female officer taking her statement. I got it all. The officer's eyes widened as Emma showed her the phone. The stream was still running, now at 47,000 viewers. News outlets were already picking it up. Number Westfield assault was trending. You brilliant girl, the officer breathed. You got him. You got them all. But as Emma was led to the ambulance, she saw something that chilled her more than the assault itself. In the crowd of horrified faces, among the students filming and crying and calling their parents, stood a group of girls, younger students, freshmen and sophomores. Watching her with a mixture of awe and recognition, how many of them had been in Coach Bradley's office? How many had sat in chairs they couldn't escape from? How many had tried to report it and been silenced? The ambulance doors were closing when someone pushed through the crowd. Chloe Martinez, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she gasped. I tried to warn you, but I didn't. I should have done more. Last year, when it was me, I'm so sorry. Emma reached out from the gurney, grasping Chloe's hand. It's not your fault. None of this is our fault. The doors closed, but Emma could still hear the chaos outside. Parents arriving, news von pulling up, the careful facade of Westfield Academy cracking apart. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. Bitch, you just destroyed everything. You think you're safe now? You have no idea what you've started. But another notification followed immediately. A message from a verified reporter at the Washington Post, then the New York Times, then 60 other news outlets. Then a notification that her live stream had hit 100,000 viewers. As the ambulance pulled away from Westfield Academy, Emma closed her eyes and let herself feel it all, the fear, the rage, the strange sensation of power that came from refusing to be silenced. She'd been glued to a chair, trapped and humiliated. assaulted in front of her entire school, but she'd torn free. And now the whole world was watching what crawled out from under Westfield Academy's polished surface. The live stream kept running, the viewer count climbing past 150. Ling. In the comments, a movement was beginning, students from other schools sharing their stories, parents demanding investigations, lawyers offering pro bono representation. Emma had thought she was alone. She was wrong. And this was just the beginning. The emergency room at Mercy General Hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Emma lay on the examination table while Dr. Sarah Chen carefully applied solvent to the superglue burns, each touch sending fire across her skin. The chemical burns were documented, photographed, swabbed for evidence. Emma's mother had arrived 15 minutes after the ambulance, her housekeeping uniform still on, her face a map of rage and terror. "My baby," Maria Wallace whispered, holding Emma's hand while the nurse worked. "My brave, brave girl." Detective Andrea Thompson stood in the corner, her phone constantly buzzing with updates. "Emma, the live stream is at 300,000 views. News outlets are calling it the most important piece of evidence in a school assault case in years. You've done something incredible here." But Emma didn't feel incredible. She felt raw, exposed, like someone had peeled her skin off and left her nerves screaming in the wind. The iPod Touch, now evidence, had been bagged and tagged, but the stream kept running on the cloud, unstoppable now that it had been shared across every platform imaginable. "There are reporters outside," Detective Thompson continued, "at least 40 news trucks. The FBI has been contacted. Apparently, Coach Bradley has been under investigation for 2 years, but they never had concrete evidence. Your live stream just blew their case wide open." Emma's phone, her personal one, hadn't stopped buzzing. Her mother had it now, fielding calls from reporters, lawyers, activists. But one message had come through that Maria showed her, a simple text from an unknown number that said, "Thank you for being brave. Aliyah Johnson." Aliyah Johnson, the girl who'd transferred out of Westfield last year after behavioral issues. Emma wondered how many others were watching. How many were finally seeing their own stories validated. Dr. Chen finished treating the last of the burns. "You're going to have some scarring," she said gently. "The superglue caused chemical burns in several places. I'm recommending a plastic surgery consult." "But Emma, what you did today was remarkable. These injuries are evidence of assault. Clear, undeniable evidence." A knock on the door interrupted them. A woman in an expensive suit entered. Catherine Park, according to her business card, from one of the city's top law firms. "Miss Wallace, I'm here on behalf of the National Women's Law Center. We'd like to represent you pro bono. What happened today wasn't just assault, it was a Title IX violation of massive proportions. We're prepared to file federal charges." Emma's head spun. 3 hours ago, she'd been nobody. Now she was at the center of a storm that was growing by the minute. "I need to think," Emma said weakly. "Of course. But Emma, you should know, 17 other girls have already come forward. Former Westfield students who want to add their testimonies to your case. Coach Bradley has allegedly been doing this for years, using the students to trap and humiliate anyone who rejected his advances. You've given them the courage to speak. 17 others. The number hit Emma like a physical blow. Outside Mercy General, the media circus had grown to epic proportions. Emma watched from her hospital room window as news anchors broadcast live, their reports interspersed with clips from her live stream. Social media had exploded. Westfield assault was the top trending topic globally, with celebrities, politicians, and activists weighing in. But it was the students that moved Emma most. Videos were popping up from Westfield Academy, showing what was happening in real time. Students staging walkouts, parents storming the administration building, the football team, Coach Bradley's own players, standing in the hallway with signs reading, "We stand with Emma," and "Real men don't assault." Madison Price had posted a tearful video confession admitting that Coach Bradley had been grooming his female athletes for years, using them to punish girls who refused him. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed into the camera. "I was 15 when he started telling me I was special, that I needed to prove my loyalty to the team. I didn't realize. I'm so sorry." Emma. By evening, the state attorney general had announced a full investigation into Westfield Academy. Coach Bradley had been arrested on multiple charges, including sexual assault, false imprisonment, and conspiracy. 3 administrators who had covered for him were also in custody. The entire school board had called an emergency meeting that was being broadcast live on local news. Emma watched it all from her hospital bed, feeling disconnected from her own story. Her body ached, her skin burned where the glue had been removed, but something else was happening inside her, a transformation she hadn't expected. "I want to speak," she told her mother suddenly. "To the media? To everyone?" Maria Wallace squeezed her daughter's hand. "Are you sure?" "Maya?" They silenced 17 other girls. "Maybe more. Someone needs to speak for them." Catherine Park arranged it quickly. A single camera, a reporter from NBC News, a controlled environment in a hospital conference room. Emma wore a hospital gown and the blanket they'd given her, her burns visible, her face pale but determined. "2 hours ago, I was superglued to a chair in front of my entire school," Emma began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Coach Bradley thought he could touch me because I was a scholarship student, because I was nobody, because he'd done it before and gotten away with it." She looked directly into the camera. "But I'm not nobody. None of us are nobody. And today, we proved that even the most powerful predator can be brought down by one girl with a phone and the courage to hit record." The interview aired within the hour. By then, the live stream had hit 1 million views. The FBI had taken over the investigation. 3 more states had announced they were reviewing complaints against coaches in their school systems. But the real revolution was happening at Westfield Academy itself. Students had occupied the main building, demanding the resignation of every administrator who had enabled Coach Bradley. Parents were pulling their donations until systemic changes were implemented. The football team had announced they would refuse to play until justice was served. Jake Morrison, the team captain, and a kid who'd been raised on Coach Bradley's philosophy, stood at a makeshift podium in the occupied building. "We failed Emma Wallace," he said, his voice breaking. "We stood by while our coach hurt people. We participated in a culture that made this possible, that ends today." Behind him, the entire varsity squad stood in solidarity. Several were crying. These were boys who'd been taught that power meant domination, that strength meant silence. Now they were learning different lessons. Emma was released from the hospital at 10 p.m., exiting through a side entrance to avoid the media crowd. But someone was waiting for her anyway, Chloe Martinez, holding a worn teddy bear. "This was mine," Chloe said, offering the bear to Emma. When it happened to me, I held on to this. I thought you might need something to hold on to too." Emma took the bear, tears finally coming. Why didn't anyone stop him? "Because the system was designed to protect him," Chloe said. "But you just redesigned the system." The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of legal meetings, medical appointments, and media appearances. Emma's story had gone global. The BBC, Al Jazeera, news outlets from Japan to Brazil were covering it. The live stream had been saved and reshared millions of times, becoming a rallying cry for student activists worldwide. But the most powerful moment came when Emma returned to Westfield Academy for the first time. She hadn't planned to go back so soon. But when she heard about the assembly being held, a mandatory gathering where the interim administration would address the crisis, she knew she had to be there. Walking through those mahogany doors felt different now. Students parted as she passed, some applauding, others crying, many reaching out to touch her arm in solidarity. The gymnasium where it had happened had been transformed, the chair removed, the space filled with flowers and messages of support from around the world. Principal Morrison, who had been cleared of involvement and was leading the reform efforts, met Emma at the entrance. "You don't have to do this," she said gently. "Yes, I do," Emma replied. The assembly was standing room only, with overflow crowds watching on screens in other rooms. Parents, students, faculty, and media filled every available space. When Emma entered, the room erupted in applause that lasted 5 full minutes. She took the microphone with hands that barely shook. "4 days ago, in this room, I was assaulted and humiliated while you watched," she began. The room fell silent. Some of you laughed. Some of you filmed it. Some of you participated. She could see Madison Price in the 3rd row, tears streaming down her face. "But I'm not here to blame you. I'm here because we have a chance to change everything. To build a school where no girl has to carry pepper spray to a teacher's office, where no student has to choose between their education and their safety, where predators can't hide behind trophies and donations." She pulled out a piece of paper, a list she'd been working on with lawyers and activists. "These are our demands. First, mandatory consent education for all students and staff. Second, an independent oversight board for all harassment complaints. Third, the immediate termination of any staff member who knew about Coach Bradley's behavior and stayed silent. Fourth, a fund to support victims of assault, paid for by the athletic budget that protected him for so long." The crowd was on its feet before she finished, students chanting, "We stand with Emma," parents nodding approval, even teachers joining in. But Emma wasn't done. "And I have something to say to the 17 girls who came forward, and to all the others who are still silent. You are not alone. You were never alone. And you will never be alone again." The assembly ended with the entire school taking a pledge, written by students overnight, to create a culture of consent, respect, and protection. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't fix everything overnight, but it was a start. Over the following weeks, the changes came fast and hard. Coach Bradley was denied bail after more victims came forward, the total eventually reaching 31 girls over 8 years. He faced over 200 years in prison. The administrators who had protected him were charged as accessories. Madison Price and 12 other students who had participated in the assault were sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling. But more importantly, they became some of the most vocal advocates for change, using their platforms to educate others about complicity and courage. Westfield Academy underwent a complete transformation. The entire athletic department was restructured. New policies were implemented that became a model for schools nationwide. The infamous chair was replaced with a memorial garden dedicated to survivors of assault. Emma herself became an unexpected icon, invited to speak at the United Nations. Featured on the cover of Time magazine under the headline, "The Girl Who Wouldn't Stay Silent," offered book deals and movie rights and full scholarships to any university in the country. But the moment that meant the most came 6 months later at Westfield's graduation ceremony. Emma stood at the podium as valedictorian, a position she'd earned through grades, not sympathy. She wore her cap and gown with pride, the scars from the superglue still faintly visible on her arms. 8 months ago, I was the invisible girl," she began. "The scholarship kid who ate lunch alone and counted tiles to avoid eye contact. I thought being invisible would keep me safe." She looked out at the crowd, her mother in the front row, crying with pride. The other survivors scattered throughout, some graduating with her, others there to support.com. The new administration that had rebuilt Westfield from the ground up, the students who had learned that courage was contagious, but I learned that invisible people can't change the world. It takes being seen, really seen, in all our vulnerability and power. It takes standing up even when your legs shake. It takes pressing record even when your hands tremble. It takes refusing to let them glue us to chairs we never chose to sit in. The crowd rose as one, applause thundering through the auditorium. But Emma's eyes found the group of freshman girls in the back, the next generation of Westfield students who would never have to count tiles to stay safe. To the class of 2024, Emma concluded, "May you never need to be as brave as we were, but may you always remember that you can be." She moved her tassel from right to left, and somewhere in the celebration that followed, the girl who had been glued to a chair completed her transformation into the woman who had torn free, not just from the adhesive that bound her body, but from the silence that had bound an entire system. Later, as Emma packed up her dorm room for college, she found the teddy bear Chloe had given her that first night. Tucked inside was a note she hadn't seen before. "For the next girl who needs to be brave, pass it on. Every survivor who came before you." Emma smiled, understanding finally that her story had never been just about her. It was about every girl who'd been cornered in an office, every student who'd been silenced by power, every person who'd been told their pain was less important than someone else's reputation. She placed the bear carefully in a box marked Harvard dorm room and picked up her phone to check her messages. 300 emails from girls around the world, sharing their stories, asking for advice, finding their voices. Emma Wallace had been glued to a chair in front of 800 people, but when she tore free, she brought an army with her, and they were never going to be silent again. The live stream that changed everything had ended at 3.7 million views, but the movement it started had no end in sight. In schools across America and beyond, students were standing up, speaking out, recording truth. Predators were being exposed. Systems were being reformed. Survivors were being believed, all because one invisible girl decided to be seen, all because Emma Wallace pressed record, all because sometimes the most powerful weapon against injustice is simply refusing to play by their rules and making sure the whole world watches while you tear them down. As Emma drove away from Westfield Academy for the last time, she passed a billboard that had been crowdfunded by students from around the country. It showed a simple message in bold letters: "Courage is contagious. Thank you, Emma Wallace." Chloe Martinez had taken a gap year to build an app, Safe Space, that allowed students to discreetly livestream to trusted contacts with one touch. It had already been downloaded 2 million times. She'd testified before Congress, her voice steady as she said, "Emma Wallace gave me the courage to turn my trauma into purpose." As Emma headed to her constitutional law class, she passed a group of freshman orientation leaders explaining campus safety resources. She heard her name mentioned, her story used as an example of why speaking up mattered. It still felt surreal. Professor Catherine Park, the same lawyer who'd represented her, now teaching at Harvard Law, nodded as Emma entered the classroom. "Today we're discussing Wallace v. Westfield Academy," she announced to the class, "a case that fundamentally changed how educational institutions handle assault allegations. Can anyone explain the significance of live-streamed evidence in establishing institutional liability?" Hands shot up around the room. Emma smiled, remembering when she couldn't even raise her hand in class without shaking. After class, Professor Park pulled her aside. "The Attorney General's office called. They want to know if you're interested in a summer internship with their Civil Rights Division, specifically the team that prosecutes institutional sexual assault cases." Emma's heart raced. "Are you serious?" They said they need someone who understands the survivor perspective, someone who won't back down from powerful institutions. Remind you of anyone? That weekend, Emma returned to Westfield for the dedication of the new Student Safety Center. The building stood where the old gym had been, the place where she'd been glued to that chair. Now it housed counselors, advocacy resources, and a 24-hour crisis center. The ceremony drew hundreds, survivors from multiple generations of Westfield students, current students who'd never known the old culture, parents who'd fought for change, media who'd kept the story alive. Emma stood before the crowd, no longer the terrified girl in the second-hand blazer. "A year ago, they tried to glue me to a chair," she began. "They thought if they could hold my body still, they could keep my voice silent. They thought wrong." She unveiled the plaque by the entrance. The Emma Wallace Center for Student Safety and Empowerment. dedicated to all who refused to be silenced. But it was what happened after the ceremony that broke her composure. A line of girls, dozens of them, from Westfield and beyond, waited to speak with her, each one holding a small teddy bear, the symbol that had spread among survivors. Each one with a story, each one with newfound courage. "I reported my coach last month," one said. "I testified against my teacher," said another. "I started a support group at my school. I'm running for student body president on a safety platform. I'm not afraid anymore." Emma hugged each one, tears flowing freely. Maria Wallace watched from nearby. Her daughter, no longer the girl who counted tiles, but a young woman who'd helped others find their footing. As the sun set over Westfield Academy, Emma stood in the memorial garden that had replaced that horrible chair. 31 roses grew there now, one for each known survivor from the Bradley years. But new buds were forming, hope growing from pain, beauty from ashes. Chloe joined her. No longer the nervous girl who'd warned her in the library, but a confident entrepreneur whose app was saving lives daily. "You know what's crazy?" Chloe said. "They thought they were putting on a show that day. Humiliating you for entertainment?" Emma nodded. "Instead, they created the evidence that brought down their entire system. 3.7 million views." Chloe mused. "I checked today. People still watch it, still share it, still use it to teach what consent isn't." They stood in comfortable silence. Two survivors who'd transformed their trauma into purpose. As Emma prepared to leave, a current Westfield student approached hesitantly. A freshman, probably 14, clutching her books like armor. "Miss Wallace, I just wanted to say, because of you. I eat lunch in the cafeteria now, not the library. Not hiding. Just eating lunch like a normal person. It was such a small thing, such a massive thing. That's all I ever wanted to." Emma told her, to just be a normal person. Safely. The girl smiled and hurried off to join her friends. Emma watched her go, remembering her own lonely lunches among dusty philosophy books. Her phone buzzed one last time. A CNN alert. Federal investigation reveals nationwide pattern of institutional assault cover-ups. Attorney General credits Emma Wallace case as catalyst for sweeping reforms. Emma turned off her phone and walked toward her rental car. Tomorrow she had a torts exam. Next week, meetings about the documentary. Next month, a testimony before another state legislature considering the Emma Wallace protocol. But tonight, she was just a college student heading back to campus. A survivor who'd refused to stay silent. A girl who'd been glued to a chair and torn free, bringing a revolution with her. The scars on her arms had faded but never fully disappeared. She didn't want them to. They were proof of what she'd survived. Evidence of what she'd overcome. Reminders of why she fought. As she drove away from Westfield one more time, Emma allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. She'd done more than survive. She'd ensured that the next girl wouldn't have to be as brave, and that was worth every second of pain, every moment of fear, every scar that caught the light. Emma Wallace had torn free, and she'd made sure the door stayed open behind her.